Again, I want to thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Stephanie Wells. I work at MEFA. I've been at MEFA a little over 20 years, just celebrated my 20-year anniversary in March. So I just want to thank you all for joining us tonight. We are recording tonight's webinar, and we will be providing copies of the PowerPoint slides to all of the registrants. If you do have questions, feel free to type those in the Q&A. We did disable the chat feature so we could just work on one set of questions, but feel free to type any questions in the Q&A and I will answer those as we go. We will also have everybody on mute. So if you're trying to talk to me, I won't be able to hear you. So please type any questions in the chat feature. All right, so just a little bit about MEFA before we get started. Again, my name is Stephanie Wells, and I've been at MEFA for 20 years, working with colleges and universities, as well as helping families pay the college bill and learn about financial aid and admissions and saving for college. So we do a lot of great work in the community with programs like this one. MEFA is a nonprofit quasi-state authority. We've been around almost 40 years, since 1982. We're actually created to offer loan programs for families at a low cost. But since then, we've gone on to offer college savings plans like the U Fund and the U Plan. And some of you may have one of those savings plans, which we'll talk about later. But we also offer one of our biggest parts of what we do at MEFA is our mission to help families through our guidance initiatives and education. So I'm going to point you in a lot of those tools tonight, towards a lot of those tools. So I want to congratulate all the students who are on the line and their parents on your college acceptances. We know that in any year that this can be a very stressful time, not only for the student, but for the whole family, but particularly during a pandemic. It's had to have been a very, very difficult year for students trying to, apply to college and maybe working with their guidance counselors remotely. It hasn't been easy. And then trying to, select colleges when you might not have been able to visit the campus. So, it is a crazy year, as we all know, and hopefully next year will be a little bit better. But hang in there. I'm hoping that all of the seniors on the line tonight have a much better freshman year than the students who had just experienced their freshman year during a pandemic. I'm hoping it'll be a little bit better for you. So here's what we're going to cover tonight. We want to make sure that you understand all the items that are on your financial aid offers. If you haven't applied for aid, it's not too late. We have options for you. And how to calculate the balance due. I have a great tool that I'm going to show you to calculate your balance due for all of your financial aid offers. Might seem like an easy thing to figure out, but when you have different billed costs and unbilled costs and different award offers that you're looking at, it might be, hard to figure out what is my net price at each school. And once we figured out what your net price is at each school, we want to give you some tools and guidance on how to make a financially wise decision, a financial safety decision that's going to work best for the whole family in developing a plan to pay your college bill. So hopefully that's a lot to cover in 1 hour. So we are definitely going to try and, wrap up the PowerPoint within the hour. But I will stop a couple times for questions and then stay on the line as long as we need to at the end for Q&A. So feel free, for those who are just joining us tonight, to type your questions in the Q&A and we'll make sure we get those answered. So a quick refresher on aid and how it might be given out in a financial aid offer. Some families may see a combination of both merit-based aid, given based on the student's academic achievements or skills, and need-based aid, given based on the family's financial circumstances from those financial aid forms that you filled out. Now, not every college offers merit-based aid. For example, Ivy League schools, all of their students are meritorious, so they don't have athletic scholarships or, academic scholarships, but they do have very generous need-based aid. So most of the aid that's given out nationwide from the state and federal government, as well as from colleges and universities, is based on financial need, is need-based aid. However, hopefully, some of you do see some merit awards coming your way from some of the schools the students were accepted to. If you did receive a merit-based award, that would have come from the admissions office. Typically, they'll let you know about that with the admissions letter, the acceptance letter. Most of the merit-based awards that are given out are going to be based on the student's overall admissions application. So the criteria could be different from school to school as far as what is the amount of the aid, merit-based scholarship, what is the criteria to maintain that scholarship. Even within a school, they might have different levels of scholarships with different criteria, meaning different GPA minimums that the student needs to meet. There could also be majors that are attached to the scholarship. So, if it's the engineering school that gave the student a scholarship, the student might need to be required to stay in the engineering program to maintain that scholarship. So that's just one example. But it's very important for the student to know what their role is and what their responsibility is to keep this merit-based aid, whatever that minimum GPA is, and to understand what will happen if they do lose that scholarship. Will you get the semester to get their grades back up, or maybe get a percentage of the scholarship taken away, or the whole thing? It really depends on the school and the scholarship, but you definitely want to know before you make a commitment what that criteria is. Now, the rest of the aid on award, or most of the aid in some circumstances, is going to be based on financial need. So when you filled out that FAFSA form, and many of you probably fill out the CSS profile form as well for private colleges, that's all going to be your need-based aid. So federal funding as well as state funding from the state of Massachusetts would be based on that FAFSA form that you filled out. So you don't need to file a separate application for state aid, just filling out FAFSA automatically is your application for state aid as well. Standardized formulas are used across the board for federal, state, and institutional aid. Now, do keep in mind whether it's merit or need-based aid, most colleges aren't going to give you 100% of the aid you're eligible for. So they might give you a percentage. Some schools might not have any merit-based aid or even need-based aid for you. It really depends on the family and what you qualify for. So just know that most families aren't going to get 100%, but hopefully when we go through some of these tools, we'll be able to compare the letters and, maybe hopefully enough of the aid is covered where you can make an informed financial decision. So it's important to understand all the line items in a financial aid award. The first thing that you'll see typically is going to be any grants or scholarships that were offered to you from the college itself. So they're typically going to list their own grants and scholarships. They're going to put those first if you were eligible. A question I get a lot is, if I don't see a grant or scholarship, can I ask for one? And typically they're going to give you their awards up front. So if you don't see anything from the college on the admissions letter, it probably means that you did not receive a merit scholarship. You can always check in with the admissions office. Now, grants and scholarships are the good stuff. It's the free money that the student does not have to pay back after they graduate. Depending on your family's financial situation and the information you filled out on the FAFSA form, you could have received federal or state grants or scholarships. Those are for the families with the most financial need. So, a lot of people won't see those on an award. So you might not see a Pell Grant or a Mass Grant on your award. The next thing that you might see on a financial aid offer is the work study program. So in this example, we can see $1,500. Now, the work study program is a federal program where colleges can offer this to students who have financial need to give them a part-time job on campus to earn some money, in this example, up to $1,500, to cover some of the unbilled expenses like books and supplies and transportation costs. Now, typically the work study money is not deducted from the bill because the student still has to earn those funds through a biweekly paycheck after getting and applying for a job on campus. The next item that you might see on an award is going to be federal direct student loans. So in this example, we show you the unsubsidized portion as well as the subsidized portion for a student. The maximum that a student can borrow is $5,500. So you might see it broken up if you do qualify for that subsidy. I'm going to talk about the loan on the next slide, so I'll get into the details a little bit more. But again, federal aid will be on your award if you're eligible for it. State aid, such as the Mass grant, will be on your award if you're eligible for it, as well as any aid from the college or university. Now, you've probably noticed if you've gotten a few offers that financial aid awards do look different, not only the amounts, but also the way everything's laid out. Some colleges might put the cost in there as well and help you figure out the net price. And some might just give you the award without any information about the cost, and you can find it on their website, but it really does vary from school to school. So I have a great tool that I'm going to show you in a minute that will help you line them up side by side. Now you are going to need to accept or decline all or part of the award before you deposit or when you deposit. Usually it's May 1st. That's usually the national deadline. Last year it got extended for, a lot of schools extended it. I've heard of a few schools doing May 3rd this year as their deposit deadline, but just find out from the school the student's going to be attending what the deadline is so you can get your deposit in. And you might be asking, well, why would I decline any of the financial aid award? And for some families, the student might not need to borrow. They might not need to take out that loan, for example. So they might decline the loan. And I will talk about that loan right now. So the federal direct student loan, when we talk about financial aid, this is considered financial aid because it does have some really good benefits that you wouldn't find with a regular bank-based loan or even a loan through MEFA. The rates, you can see right now, the rate is 2.75% fixed. That's going to be fixed for the life of that loan. So students who are in school now, that is their current rate for this year's loan. For students who are going to school next year, those rates should be announced sometime in May, and they'll go into effect July 1st. So every year on July 1st, the rates could change. But whatever the rate is for your loan or your student's loan, it's going to stay that rate for the life of that loan. So they could have 4 different loans when they graduate with 4 different interest rates, depending on how the rates shake out each year. Now, I mentioned the subsidized portion, and that means that interest is not going to accrue until after the student graduates and leaves school. So that means it's interest-free, so it's subsidized. Now, not everybody is going to qualify for this subsidy. It is based on your family's financial need. And you might even see, on one award, you got the subsidy, and then on another award, you didn't. And that could be totally to do with the cost of the school. The higher cost school, you might qualify for that subsidy, whereas a lower cost school, you might not qualify because the cost is much lower. So it really depends whether you'll qualify for both. But the unsubsidized portion means that interest is going to accrue after it's dispersed. So you don't have to make payments on the interest and principal, but it is going to accrue. So you can make voluntary payments on the interest if you want while the student's in school, so that when they graduate, they're only left with what they borrowed, not the interest that has also accrued. Because when they graduate, that interest is going to be capitalized and added to their principal balance. Now, there is a small fee that's going to be deducted from the loan. So you can see the direct loan limits below on the blue box there. A freshman can borrow up to $5,500. Up to $3,500 could be subsidized, meaning interest won't accrue. Students will have to fill out an electronic promissory note and go through entrance counseling before they are finalized with this loan. So the entrance counseling is basically an online form that students need to go through to demonstrate that they understand their rights and responsibilities as a federal student loan borrower. Now, students will receive information about how to do all of this after they've deposited and the college knows that what students are coming to their school. Then they'll start communicating with to the freshmen, usually either by email or through their school's college portal, that they need to sign their promissory note, for example. So keep an eye on those school portals, keep an eye on the emails. A lot is electronic these days, so you might not be getting a piece of paper in the mail about any of this. So definitely keep an eye on that. And again, there's no payments due on these loans while the student's in school. When they graduate, there's several different repayment options that they can choose from, so it's very flexible. And there are loan forgiveness options for certain students in certain fields. For example, teaching in low-income areas is one example. There's a public service loan forgiveness. Now, there are criteria, very strict criteria attached to actually achieving those. So I won't get into the details here, but you can find more information on studentaid.gov. And for those of you who joined us a little bit right after we got started, I just want to let you know we are going to be sending these PowerPoint slides along with the recording of tonight's webinar, probably tomorrow. So don't feel like you have to write down all the websites I'm referring to, because you will get this in an email. And also type in your questions, and I will stop a few times as we go and answer those, as well as stay as long as we need to at the end to do Q&A. So verification is something that some families might need to do, and it might be at all schools, or it might be at just one school, or you might not have to go through verification at all. It really depends on the school and whether the Department of Education has flagged your FAFSA form, for example, for verification. But you will receive information from the school. It could be in writing, in a paper mail, or it could be an email, or in the student's web portal at the school. They'll let you know what documentation they need to verify your information or your financial aid application. Some of the common things they might ask for is a tax return transcript, maybe business statements, account statements, things like that. But bottom line is just keep an eye on your email and your web portals, and make sure that you are responding to colleges, because your financial aid offer is not complete and it won't be credited to the bill until you've done your verification. Now, if you haven't applied for financial aid, it's not too late to do so. You can still fill out that FAFSA to see if you qualify for federal and state aid. You might have missed the college's deadline, or maybe you haven't missed their deadline, but you should check with them. It's not too late. It might not be too late to apply, even for the college's aid. At some schools, it doesn't matter when you apply. At some, they have a deadline and the money runs out. It really depends. So don't be afraid to apply for aid if you feel like you need it. It's a good thing to do. Even if it's just to borrow that federal student loan, you still have to fill out your FAFSA form. So the current deadline to receive aid from the state of Massachusetts is May 1st. There is talk that that might be extended, so we'll keep an eye on that deadline. But it's a good idea to just get your FAFSA in. We do have a great program coming up that I'll talk about on the next slide if you need help filling out your FAFSA. So all federal aid, including the Federal Plus loan, which is a parent loan I'll talk about, does require that FAFSA to be filled out. Now, if you're not going to fill out the FAFSA, you don't want to apply for aid, there are still options to pay the bill, such as payment plans, which are interest-free. They're basically budget plans that you can get from the college, as well as credit-based or private loans, such as loans through MEFA or other lenders. So if you still need to fill out your FAFSA, we are hosting, in partnership with a bunch of state agencies and nonprofit groups across the state, we're hosting a FAFSA festival on April 24th. So it's a Saturday. We'll be open virtually, of course, from 9 to 5. So, register. You can see the website right here. Again, you'll get a copy of this PowerPoint in your email. It's the MEFA FAFSA Festival. So you can log in at any time at your leisure and pop on. We'll have volunteers. We'll put you in a separate virtual room so you have privacy, and they will help you doing a Zoom, just like we're doing tonight with screen sharing, and help you fill out your FAFSA. So these are folks that work in financial aid offices that are going to volunteer their time on Saturday, April 24th. So make sure that you join us if you haven't filled out your FAFSA, because we can help you with that. So let's talk real quick about the wait list. So some schools might have a very long wait list and not take any students or very few students from their wait list. So be prepared for that if you are on a wait list. If you are interested in that school and you do want to attend, it is important that you formally accept your spot on the wait list so that the school knows that you're still interested. Just keep in mind, however, that not every student accepted off the wait list is going to receive financial aid. Some schools take students off the wait list that don't need financial aid because they might be out of money at that point in time, maybe in May or June when they're looking at their wait list. It really depends on the school. Some schools will give you the same amount of aid, whether you were accepted in December for early action or whether you were accepted off the wait list. But you want to find out from the school that you're interested in, where the student was waitlisted, what their financial aid policy is. Now, remember, you do need to deposit at a college by May 1st or their deadline where the student was accepted. Now, if you deposit at one school and let's say June 1st or maybe mid-May rolls around and the student gets off a wait list at the school they really want to go to, their first choice school, for example, you'll lose your deposit at the previous school, which could be $300 to $500. So there's another caution there. But if you've considered all that and you know what the deal is with financial aid at the school, make sure the student is, supplying any updated grades or test scores that could help boost their admissions application. That demonstrated interest is still a factor, even at the waitlist point in time over the admissions process. Be in touch with them through social media and keep an eye on that email for any updates from the college. So I just want to answer a few quick questions before I get into the next part and do our demo here. The question is, do you have to decline schools that the student isn't going to go to? So if you've been accepted to 5 schools and you know that 2 are off the list, let the admissions office know that the student is not going to be accepting their offer. It's a common courtesy and it helps them, understand who's coming that they've accepted, and they might be able to take students off the wait list at that point, as they know that students aren't coming. So very good question and a good idea to let any schools know that the student is not attending. So another question, is a federal direct a need-based loan, or can every student qualify for this loan? And the answer to that is both. So the subsidized portion of the federal direct loan is based on financial need, and the unsubsidized portion is not. So anybody, any family or student, regardless of income, can get this loan. It just depends on whether part of it is subsidized or if the entire thing is unsubsidized. So no matter what your income is, every student can get that unsubsidized loan as a freshman for $5,500. So great questions. Another one, do we need to pay back grants? The answer is no. Grants and scholarships are free and you do not have to pay those back. Another question, when you send in your deposit, does that automatically accept the financial aid offer, or is it a separate step? Great question. The answer is check with the financial aid office. They will provide you with those instructions. The admissions office will provide you with those instructions. If you're not sure, then feel free to give the school a call and just find out, because sometimes you might be able to pay the deposit online and then you have to let the financial aid office know about the award. So it really depends on the school. So I would just advise, just be in touch with the school about that. Okay, so we'll stop Q&A for a bit and get back to the presentation, and then we'll stop again in a few minutes. So when you're figuring out your balance due, in a nutshell, you're basically taking your charges that the school is charging you for, your direct costs, and then deducting your enrollment deposit and your financial aid, and whatever is left over, that's what you owe the school. Now, that's not the only costs that you're going to have to come up with, because as I mentioned, there are unbilled costs, such as books that we'll go over. And maybe if the student is living on off campus, they still have, apartment rent and utilities and food they have to pay for, but the school isn't going to bill them for off-campus housing, but they will include that in the budget if the student is living off campus. So this is MEFA's college cost calculator. You can add up to 4 schools here. You can also create a spreadsheet using these line items. I'm going to demonstrate this for you real quick. I'm only going to put in 1 school for timing's sake. I just want to show you how this works because I think it really illustrates how to compare award offers and also helps talk a little bit more detail about some of the line items you'll be looking at for cost and aid. So the annual cost is that sticker price, the cost of attendance. Your financial aid is based on the full cost of attendance, not just the billed costs. So first you're going to have tuition and fees. So I'm going to pretend that we're looking at a private college here in the Northeast, which, they tend to be a little bit pricey, but hopefully with financial aid, it's affordable. So we have $55,000 for tuition and fees. And then we have room and board, which is usually comparable from school to school within about $2,000 to $3,000. Really depends on where the school is. Room and board in New York City and Manhattan is going to be much more expensive than, in the suburbs somewhere. So just keep that in mind. So I'm just going to put in round numbers here. Again, I'm making these up just based on awards and numbers I've seen. So books and supplies are going to be those unbilled expenses that I mentioned. And you can actually save money on some of these unbilled expenses by making certain decisions that are going to help save money, save the cost. So buying used books, online books, things like that are cheaper than maybe the brand new books. Even room and board, the student can live in a quad or a triple instead of a single and save money that way. The meal plan, if the student doesn't need the full meal plan, then maybe spring semester, you go 1 level down so you don't have to pay as much for the meal plan. So those are ways that you can save money just by, making different decisions. So I'm going to put in here for books and supplies, $2,500. And usually there'll be a line item somewhere where they show you the cost on the school's website or in any documents they sent you. Then we have transportation, which is another unbilled expense. And that is going to, really be budgeted by the college based on where the student lives and where the college is located. So if you live here in Massachusetts and the student is going to UMass, they're not going to have a huge transportation budget because they can drive there or take the train or bus. But if they're going to school in California and they live in Massachusetts, they're obviously going to have higher transportation costs, airfare, things like that. So you do want to build these in to your budget. So I'm going to pretend that we're pretty close to the college and put in $750. So health insurance here in Massachusetts, every student is required to be insured. And if the student is covered by the school's plan, then they can waive this cost. So it could be up to $2,000 to pay for the school's health insurance plan. So if you don't need the health insurance, you definitely want to waive that when you get your bill. I'm going to put in 0 in our example here. If the student is going out of state, let's say you live here in Massachusetts, make sure that you've checked with your health insurance program to make sure that they're going to be fully covered in New York, California, wherever they're going to school. And if they aren't, then you may consider buying that school's health insurance plan for the year. Now, there could be other costs here, such as, buying a new laptop, something like that. I'm just going to leave that blank for now. Could be, club fees, things like that. So you can see if we scroll down, our calculator is automatically adding everything up for us. So we have a kind of a scary number here, 73,000, but hopefully once we start putting in our financial aid and deducting that, it'll be a little bit more reasonable. So we're going to, again, I'm making numbers up here, just pretending that the student qualified for the Pell Grant. Maybe the SCOG grant is another federal need-based grant. Again, these grants are for the neediest students. And let's say we also get a grant from the state and from the college. I'm going to combine, maybe they got merit and need-based aid from the college. Could be a combination of both. You might even see 3 types of aid from the college on an award. It really depends on the school, but I'm gonna put in 25,000. So typically, when you're looking at aid from the college, they usually are committing to 4 years for a merit award. So for example, if the school says, "I'm gonna give you a $100,000 scholarship, 25,000 a year for 4 years," that's typical that a school would provide that for 4 years. And the need-based aid will typically, keep approximate pace if your financial situation stays about the same. But the need-based aid could fluctuate depending on the family's finances and what they're filling out on the FAFSA each year. Now, outside scholarships and grants. So scholarships and grants that you applied for locally. So the student filled out their applications through their guidance office for all the local scholarships, for example. Those are typically just for the first year, although not always. Sometimes some of these outside private scholarships could be for 4 years, but most of them are just for the freshman year. Now, in addition to the local community and looking through the high school, definitely go with that option. Start there, start local. There's less competition, less students applying for those scholarships. Don't be afraid to have the student apply for scholarships that need an essay, because less students want to apply for those, so there's less competition. But above and beyond the local scholarships, there's also search engines you can look at. Here you can see we have MEFA Pathway. I have another slide just on scholarships, so I'll get into a little bit more detail in a minute. But let's just pretend we've already found out that the student is, involved in the Girl Scouts, and she got $1,000 scholarships from the Girl Scouts, for example. Now we have, if we scroll down, we can see our financial aid is being deducted from the cost here. So then we put in our loans, our federal direct loans. If the school is offering any other type of loans, usually it's just the federal direct loan. Sometimes colleges might put a federal Parent Plus loan in there just to show you an option to pay the bill, but it can be a little deceiving because it looks like it's financial aid. So just be cautious of that. If you see a plus loan, that is not financial aid. You still have to apply for that as a parent to take that out. And the rate could be higher than some of the other loan options that your family might want to consider. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute as well. So we'll put 0 for the school loan. And then other resources. So this is where you could put in the work study award if you received that. If grandma or grandpa says, we've been saving, we have some money for you, you can put that in here just so you can budget and figure out, what am I going to have to come up with after we use our savings. Maybe you've saved in a 529 college savings plan. So I'll put that in here. And let's pretend the family saved a total of 20,000 and they've decided we're going to do 5,000 a year. So spread it out over 4 years, or they could use the full 20,000 year one if they wanted. So once we start deducting our financial aid from the cost, including the loans, including any savings that we might have, the calculator is going to do the work for you. Then you're left with your remaining costs. This is what you're going to have to come up with for each school. And this bottom line is really where, the rubber meets the road, where you get a true comparison. But the annual gift aid is also a very good number to compare, because that shows you how much of the aid in each package, you can line them up side by side, is the free money, the good stuff. You can save this by, using the print option, save it as a PDF. So right there, and print, or you can print it out, or you can create a spreadsheet with some of these line items. So when you're comparing your results, again, look at that net price, but really, have a conversation, decide, what can your family afford? You might have a range. One school, you might owe 11,000, and then at the top end, you might owe 40,000. It really depends. And then the other 2 or 3 might be somewhere in between. So you really want to think about the financial part, as well as, of course, the academics, the location, and what's going to be the best fit for the students. But the financial piece is what I'm focused on tonight. that I want to help folks with. So we really, MEFA is a lender, nonprofit lender, but we do advise families lending is a last resort. Try and limit your borrowing as much as possible. Now, the student's going to be taking out probably their federal direct student loan. That's going to be part of their contribution. When I talk about limiting borrowing, you do want to, keep that, but also, any additional cosign loans, try and limit that as much as possible to make it a decision that's going to be affordable for everyone. Especially if you have other students who are coming down the road that are going to be going to college. Also consider this is a 4-year plan. The process is annual. You fill out your FAFSA every year. If you're applying for any loans, you fill those applications out each year, but you want to plan for 4 years. Don't just squeak by freshman year and say, okay, we can do 1 year at a time. And, if you're borrowing, you're going to probably have to borrow for all 4 years. So keep that in mind, especially if you're doing co-signed loans with the student. Will they be able to help mom and dad pay those loans back based on their post-graduation plans? Are they going to be going to grad school where they'll be taking on a lot more debt? What are their employment options based on majors they're looking at? All those things you should be taking into consideration before you borrow and before you make your decision. So when families are looking at, ways to pay the bill, there's not a one size fits all. I often have families ask, well, how does everybody do this? And it really depends on the family and, what school they're looking at. But I like to talk to families about a combination strategy. So looking at all your options for past income, your present income, and any future income that you might need to tap into in the form of loans. So first things first, and we showed it on the college cost calculator, look at your past income in the form of savings. Dig out those savings bonds, any, bank accounts that were set up when the student, was baptized or christened or, had their, bat mitzvah, whatever it might be, birthdays, holiday money from grandma and grandpa that you tucked away. Dig all that out, try and figure out what you have and how you want to utilize it. If you did use one of the MEFA savings plans, such as the MEFA U plan or U fund, here's our phone number, and you can also go on our website to access your account information. The U plan, give us a call if the student was accepted to any of the U plan schools, or if they're looking at out-of-state schools. We can tell you how much your certificates are worth, and you can decide how you want to use those. If you saved in the U fund, that is the Massachusetts 529 plan. Feel free to give us a call. We work with Fidelity Investments. They have certified financial planners that can help you and assist you in determining how you want to utilize your funds. For example, do you want to use it all the first year and avoid borrowing, or do you want to spread it out over 4 years? However you do it, just know that most families haven't been able to save 100% of what they owe. So don't feel bad if you haven't saved or if you haven't saved the whole thing. If you have any savings, it's great. You just want to make a plan, decide how you want to utilize it. Now, if you didn't save through MEFA, definitely contact whatever 529 provider you used your for your college savings, and they can help you as well. So once you've looked at past income, then it's time to look at present income. So present income in the form of budgeting, money out of your paycheck each month. Now you could decide, I'm going to put a little bit away each month in a savings account, so that way I have it saved up when each semester bill comes up and I can just make a lump sum payment. You could do it that way, or you could also participate in the school's budget plan, which is called an interest-free monthly payment plan. Every college has one of these plans, and it basically is a way for you to spread out your payments for each semester over a period of months. So a common plan is a 10-month plan to pay for the full academic year. It could start in May, June, or July. There's usually a small enrollment fee to participate, and you can get that information from the school student account or bursar's office. They'll typically send you information or have a link to it with your bill as well. But it's good to get on this plan if you're thinking about it as soon as you know what school the student's going to. Now, once you've exhausted those resources, past and present income, you can look at future income, tapping into that with loan programs. So this is not the federal student loan I'm talking about. I'm talking about loans on top of that, such as a loan through MEFA or a Federal Plus loan. Typically, many colleges might have links to loan comparison tools on their website. Credible.com is a website you can look at online to do some shopping about different loan options. MEFA has some great programs. I'll show you our loan payment calculator to use just for planning purposes and trying to decide what you need to do. But, you know, overall, regardless of how you borrow or what you're borrowing through whom, you do want to just understand that above and beyond that federal direct student loan, these are credit-based loans. So you do have to have decent credit, good credit in a lot of instances to get approved. Sometimes mom or dad might have, you know, a co-signer, grandma, grandpa. Students typically can't get these loans on their own unless they're, you know, an adult learner typically, because they're working full-time and have established credit. But most of your, you know, typical 18-year-old freshman without limited credit or income is going to need somebody, a credit-worthy applicant to co-sign with them. Now, even if you co-sign, I'm talking to moms and dads here, you co-sign a loan, you know, I hear a lot of moms and dads say, okay, well, I co-sign those loans, but they're not really my loans, they're the students' loans. And the truth of the matter is we're really looking at the credit-worthy person to approve those loans, and that's who lenders consider the primary borrower. But anybody who signs on a loan is equally responsible at the end of the day for paying back that loan, as well as if, you know, payments are made late, it's going to affect everybody on that loan. So just keep that in mind, especially if you're taking out cosign loans and hoping the student will be able to help pay those back. Just like, you know, we talked about borrowing earlier, consider the student's post-graduation plans and whether they will be able to afford to help out with that. Excuse me. Okay, sorry about that. So understand also what type of loan you're looking at, you know, comparing the different loan options that are available. Do you like a fixed or variable rate? You know, how long do you need or do you want to pay those back? You know, the further the repayment timeline, the lower your monthly payment. That might be your goal, is to get the lowest payment possible, even if it's going to cost you a little bit more. Some folks want the lowest interest rate and the lowest total cost. That would be a shorter repayment term typically. And you know, who is the primary borrower? Everybody on the loan is equally responsible. Now, if you're unsure about loans and you want more guidance, I'm not going to get into the rates too detailed tonight, but we do have a couple of great webinars coming up. We'll be repeating it on June 2nd and July 8th, I'm sorry. And it's comparing loan options. So we will be able to assist you with that. Great webinar. If you want to join us, we will get into the nuts and bolts of loan programs, you know, looking at details like disclosure statements and things like that. So here is MEFA's loan payment calculator. I am going to demonstrate this for you real quick. And just so you can use it as a tool to help you run numbers. So I like to use this with families if they're looking at multiple different colleges, you know, at different price points, and they're thinking, okay, well, if we borrow this amount for this college, what's it going to cost us? What's our payment? And then if student decides to go to this college, what are we borrowing and what's the payment at that school? It's just a good way to run different scenarios if you're thinking about borrowing. So usually when it comes to private loans, such as loans through MEFA, the rate is going to be based on the repayment option you choose as well as your credit. So in this example, I'm going to just choose the middle option, right in the middle, the good credit profile, which is right in the middle, which is where a lot of people are going to fall under. And, you know, our rates do start at 3.75% and can go up to 5.75. It really depends on your credit score and which repayment option that you choose. But you can see here we have 5 repayment options to choose from. The first one is going to be the lowest cost one, and it will go up from there. So you can see if you do a 10-year loan and start making payments while the student's in school, for a $20,000 loan, it's going to be about $200 a month, a little more. If you decide to pay while the student's in school but want a little bit lower payment, you could do the 15 years at about $150, $160 a month for that $20,000 loan. So those are numbers that you want to run and make sure that you understand, okay, if I can afford this monthly payment for the first year, and I need to borrow years 2, 3, and 4, just multiply that, on your calculator by 4. So you'll know what the total amount of payments is after the student graduates. So that you have an understanding of, okay, I can afford year 1, but can I afford to borrow for all 4 years? What is that payment going to look like? And also, of course, look at the rate and the APRs. That's critical number to look at. But those are all going to affect that total cost of the loan, including the repayment option, the amount of years you take to pay back that loan. So that total cost of the loan is the third row here. It's kind of a big, scary number when you look at it, but it's important, just like when you're looking at a mortgage, what is the total amount I'm going to be taking out? This is very important to know. And you can see the further you put out the loan, if you defer or take longer to pay it back, the more it's going to cost. Now, I don't want to scare anybody, but I do like to make sure everybody knows this information up front before you actually borrow, so that you know what you're getting yourself into. We're always advising and counseling on minimizing borrowing as much as possible. But we know that, for most families, it's just a fact of life and something that you might need to do to make that investment for the student's education. So just to wrap this piece up, if we're looking at a combination strategy, if we owe $20,000 in this example, let's say, student's going to work over the summer, put in $1,000, maybe mom and dad save $16,000. They're going to divide that by 4 and put in $4,000 a year. So there's $5,000 off our bill. And then what's left over, we're going to look at a monthly payment. What can this family afford per month? So in this example, the mom or dad has told me I can afford $600 a month. So if this family borrowed $20,000, we just saw that would be approximately $200 a month. If you can afford more than that minimum loan payment, then don't borrow it all. Put some on a payment plan, or put it, in a savings account and paying cash each semester a portion of the bill, so that you're not borrowing the full amount. So this family has said, I can afford $600 a month. So they're going to do $500 a month on a $5,000 interest-free payment plan, budget plan through the school. And so just by doing that, we've knocked our bill in half before we've borrowed. We still need to borrow $10,000 at $100 a month, which is how we get to our $600 affordable payment. But we're only borrowing half of what we owe, not the full amount. So I'm just looking at the clock real quick. And I have some questions about scholarships. So I'm going to hold off on answering these questions because I want to definitely get through the rest of the slides by 7:30. So I'm going to see a bunch about scholarships. I'm going to just hold on for a few more minutes, folks, and then we'll answer all of your questions all at once. So the timing when you're paying your college bill, what's up next? So once you deposit at the school the student's going to be attending, the school will deduct that deposit amount, could be $500, a couple $100 from your fall semester bill. In most cases, you're going to be charged for the fall semester in the summer, and then the spring semester, you're going to be charged in the late fall, early winter. And that's fall semester bill is going to be due typically in July, August timeframe. You should be getting your bill in June or July, depending on the school, and it will be due 3 to 5 weeks later. You do want to give yourself a cushion of a couple weeks before the bill is due to apply for any loan that you might need, just so you have that cushion there. But truth be told, it is an instant credit decision, for example, with MEFA. So you should be able to find out right away if you're approved for your loan program. And set up your payment plan based on the school schedule. Now, private scholarships, I see a few questions in there about scholarships. Here's some websites that you can go to for some online searches. You should never pay anybody to do a scholarship search for you. But, check out any civic organizations you're working with. Check out, your employer, HR, see if they have tuition benefits. Any organizations, religious organizations that you're attached with, see if they have options for their members. to receive scholarships. And then look at the online search tools, which typically are national scholarship searches, where you put in demographic data and it gives you emails with scholarships the student might be eligible for based on your profile. So MEFA Pathway has a scholarship search in there. That is MEFA's online college and career planning tool that's free to use. College Board has one. There's a couple others here that you can take a look at. And also follow us on Facebook and Twitter for scholarship alerts and other great alerts about webinars we have coming up and programs that we have for the community. So you will have these websites. So I'll briefly just tell you a little bit about Mass Transfer and Tuition Break. Mass Transfer is a program. There's a lot more details on the website, but it's basically a program if the student wants to start out at community college, get some credits out of the way, get their associate's degree and then transfer to a 4-year school. That can be a really affordable option. I like to say it's not where you start, it's where you end up. Whatever college name is on that degree, that's what's going to go on the student's resume. So community colleges, particularly here in Massachusetts, can be a really great option. They're great schools, and there's one in every region of the state. And then our public state colleges and universities are also great affordable options. So student could even get tuition credits based on their grades. But just know that with this option, all their credits are going to transfer. Tuition Break is a program through the New England Board of Higher Education. Their website's right here, where you might be able to get breaks on tuition based on programs at public colleges outside of the state that you live in. So if you live in Massachusetts and the student's going to Connecticut, but the program they're looking at is not offered at any of the public schools in Massachusetts, but it is offered at UConn, for example, you might be able to get a tuition break on that program, because it does cost more, as you've probably seen if you looked at public colleges, to attend a public college as an out-of-state resident. So you can get a little break depending on the program. So make sure that you're working with the financial aid office and utilizing them as a resource. If you have any questions about your award, about how it was calculated, how they're treating private scholarships, you do need to report all the private scholarships that you receive to the financial aid office. Typically, they're going to apply those to any gap in a financial aid award. If your family's financial circumstances have changed and you want to appeal your award, you can do that through the financial aid office. Just call them or email them to find out what that process looks like. Now, just keep in mind, you might have applied for financial aid in the fall, but maybe somebody's lost a job. We're in the middle of a pandemic. Financials are, really suffering for a lot of families. So let the school know if anything has changed since you applied for financial aid, if there's been a job loss. Even if it's junior year and somebody loses their job, get in touch with the financial aid office. It's not just year one that you can appeal. It could be later on if something happens in the family, God forbid. We had a webinar 2 weeks ago on appeals with a great panel of folks from Northeastern and Stonehill and Quinsigamond Community College. We had Dean College on there and Worcester State. And we recorded that. So it's on our YouTube channel. It's on our events page of mefa.org. So definitely take a listen and watch on that. It was a great webinar. We had hundreds of people attend. And I think you'd find it really useful if you're thinking about appealing. Lots of great advice was given on that webinar. But give the school a call or email them. Most colleges that I talk to, the financial aid folks and a lot of folks are working remotely still because of the pandemic. And it might be quicker and easier to just send a quick email to set up an appointment. You could set up a Zoom appointment, for example, to have a face-to-face conversation. So what's next? Just to wrap it up, we're running right on time here. You want to make sure you pay your enrollment deposit by the college's deadline. Create a plan to pay that balance due. You see this family sitting at their kitchen table, having a kitchen table conversation, I like to call it, making sure everybody's on the same page about what mom and dad can afford, what the student might be expected to take out in loans, for example, what is the student's contribution going to be? Make sure that you've talked about that as a family before making that decision. Now, with this recording of this webinar that I'm going to email you, there will be a link, but you can find it right here in the last bullet. If you need to set up a one-on-one appointment, you can fill out a quick online form, and we will send you an email to set up a Zoom appointment where you can share your financial aid offers, and we can plug it into the calculator for you and help you come up with a plan to make it, come up with a plan and make the numbers work, so to speak. But beyond tonight, you can reach us at 449 MEFA. Our website is right here, mefa.org/college bound. That is basically a landing page that we created for after the college acceptance. Everything we talked about tonight is right on that page. And you can also email us at collegeplanning@mefa.org. Here are all our social media channels that I mentioned earlier. So definitely connect with us here. And when we would love to hear your feedback. If you go on Google, give us a great review. We'd love to get your feedback, but definitely let us know if you found this was helpful. We'd love to hear from you. So with that, I am going to end the formal part, the slide presentation, right under the hour. It's almost 7:30. Some of you may not stay, you might need to hop off, and I want to thank you for coming. If you do need to hop off, and just know we will email the recording and the slides to everybody that registered for the webinar. So with that, I want to open it up for question and answer. So to start typing those in, and I am going to start with the first one right now. Okay, so one question was websites to search for grants, which we showed you on one of those slides. So we got that one covered. And a good question, if I don't live on campus and I commute, will the admissions lower my financial aid? Well, it's going to be the financial aid office that's processing the financial aid. And if you're commuting from home, so not living in an off-campus apartment, but living at home commuting, then you will have a lower cost of attendance. So that will lower your eligibility for financial aid. You can't receive more financial aid than the full cost of attendance, which is going to include unbilled costs, like transportation is a commuting expense, for example. So your financial aid award is going to be based on your cost. So if you're commuting, room and board is not going to be part of that cost. So what is the best way to go back to the school and try and get more merit money or grants? Typically, the school is giving you their best offer up front, unless there's a financial situation that the school is unaware of. They're typically going to give you their best offer, but it never hurts to, talk to the student's first choice school, especially if that's typically going to be the most expensive one, it seems, to just let them know, we're having trouble making these numbers work. Is there anything else you can do? Maybe there's something they didn't consider that wasn't on a financial aid application, things like that. That's what we call an appeal. Typically schools aren't going to negotiate awards. But if you're looking at two schools that cost the same and, they're competitor schools, and one gave you a ton of money and the other didn't give you as much, it doesn't hurt to ask, well, how did you come up with these numbers? The financial aid office can help you understand that. And, occasionally they might throw in a couple extra thousand just to make you feel good about that financial aid offer. But I don't want to, promise you'll get more money if you ask for it, but it doesn't hurt to go back to the school if you're having trouble making the numbers work. So I have a question here about 529 plans and loans, and whether you should take out loans over the 529 and paying those down. I'm not a certified financial planner, so I'm not going to tell you how to pay the bill and what the comparison would be interest wise with what you're earning on a 529 plan and paying on a loan. But you can certainly talk to your financial planner or even the 529 organization that you saved with, just to get their advice, and they might be able to help you run those numbers. So we have a quick question about the appointment website. It is going to be, I'll just put it back here. Hold on one second. Right here. So here's a side with the appointments on there. But we are going to get an email with a link to this link to schedule an appointment. So don't feel like you have to write that down tomorrow or Tuesday, because we're closed on Monday. Depends on when I get the link. I'll share the recording, and that email I send you will have a link to the online form to request an appointment. So I'm getting some folks saying thank you. I'm glad this is helpful. And question about options for international students. You'd want to check with the school to see what aid is available at that school for international students. International students are not eligible for federal or state aid. It depends on the school whether they would consider international students for their own institutional aid. For federal and state aid, you have to be a permanent resident or US citizen. Even for borrowing, such as through MEFA, for example, and many lenders, in order to take out a loan, you would need to be a US citizen or permanent resident. So if you are an international student, I would advise checking with the colleges to see if there is aid available for international students. Some schools do give out financial aid if they have larger financial aid budgets, but many may not. It really depends on the student and the school. So check in with your school. So asking about the websites to search for grants, you're going to get a copy of this PowerPoint that will have all the websites on there. So good question. Can you apply for scholarships sophomore, junior, and senior years? There might be some out there that you can search for. Typically, you're applying the first year, and outside scholarships are only going to be available for year one. And also, typically from the college, when you're applying for admission, that's when you'll find out if the student is going to receive aid, and typically, they'll receive that for 4 years. So, typically outside scholarships are just for year one, but you can continue to search for scholarships. But just to forewarn you, most of the aid is going to come up front for the first year for outside scholarships. So question, what is the maximum amount of financial aid that a student can receive? The maximum amount of financial aid that they can receive is up to the cost of attendance at a college or university minus your family's expected family contribution. So the cost of attendance minus your family contribution that was calculated from those financial aid forms you filled out, that's what your eligibility would be for financial aid. You can't get more financial aid than that cost of attendance minus your family contribution. So question about students taking out additional loans with parents co-signing the loan. So the federal direct student loan, we talked about, the student does not need a co-signer, but above and beyond that, for credit-based loans, typically the student will need a co-signer because it's credit-based and they don't have credit to be approved. So it's really just about the credit, and the student typically won't be approved unless they have a credit-worthy co-signer. So question about what aid is available to borrow to attend colleges in Canada. I would advise you to talk to the school the student is attending in Canada to see what their loan options are. You cannot use a MEFA loan in Canada, but you could potentially, depending on the school, use federal aid, including the Federal Plus loan. So typically when you look at colleges outside of the United States, whether it's Canada or Scotland or whatever country you might be looking at, they might be certified to receive federal aid from the United States. So check in with them. McGill, for example, St. Andrews, and just naming off a couple schools that I know accept federal aid from the United States, but you'd have to check with that school in the other country. So question, is MEFA a private organization, state or federally funded? We are self-financing, but we are a nonprofit quasi-state authority. So we're a state authority here in Massachusetts, but you can use MEFA's programs anywhere in the country, any school in the country. And we are able to help families all over We're typically working with families here in Massachusetts with these type of programs like we're on tonight. But we are a nonprofit and we're self-financing. We're a quasi-state authority. So question, can I repeat the type of loan that does not need a cosigner for a student? That is the loan that we talked about earlier. And I will just go right to that slide for you. It's right in the beginning here that we covered earlier. It's this one right here. Oops. This is the federal direct student loan. So this is the loan you would see on a financial aid offer. And this is a loan where a student does not need to take out a cosigner because there's no credit check and they can defer these loans. So it's really the only way a student who's an 18-year-old with limited credit can borrow, up to $27,000 without a job, without credit, and not have to make payments until they graduate. That's why this type of loan is considered financial aid. It's not a credit-based loan. So I don't see any other questions coming in on the chat in the Q&A, but I'll leave it open another couple seconds because usually when we're at the end, somebody usually will sneak a question right at the end. So I'll just leave it open for another minute. Okay, so while I'm waiting to see if anybody else needs help, we will send a recording as well as PowerPoint slides and a link to schedule an online appointment if you wanted to do that. And here is our contact info. This will be on my email as well. So I don't see any other questions coming in. So I just want to thank everybody for joining me tonight from my dining room because I'm working remotely just like everybody else. And I hope, wish you all luck with making your decision. Please get in touch with MEFA if you need any assistance. We're here to help. We're a great resource, free resource, of course, as a nonprofit. So don't be afraid to reach out if you need help. So thank you, everybody, and have a good evening and good luck with your college process here on out.